Welcome back to the Little Leaf Café, a cosy corner of comfort and calm. In this episode, we sit beside Eloise and her cherished visitor, Grandma May, a woman full of memories, stories, and sweet wisdom. As lavender tea steams gently in mismatched cups and rain taps softly on the cafe windows, we'll listen to tales from the old days, timeless recipes, and the warm bond between generations. So, settle in, wrap yourself in a blanket, and let the soft rhythms of kindness and connection ease your heart and mind. It was just past 11 on a quiet Thursday morning when May stepped into Little Leaf Café, her cane tapping gently on the floor and her silk scarf fluttering slightly behind her in the breeze. She had taken to visiting every Thursday since Eloise returned her long-lost book, the worn, annotated copy of Wuthering Heights, with delicate handwritten notes in the margins. It had taken a series of gentle questions and conversations with locals, especially Mr. Olcott, to piece together that it belonged to her. That afternoon of reunion, over tea and shared memories, had forged something special between the two women. Since then, May had become a fixture at the cafe, a whisper of the past brushing softly against the new. Today, May wore a brooch in the shape of a sunflower, pinned neatly to her jacket, and carried a cloth-covered bundle in her bag. Eloise, already behind the counter arranging scones on a cake stand, looked up with a warm smile. "You're early today, Grandma May," she teased gently, the nickname having evolved naturally from her weekly visits. "Well," May said with a sparkle in her eye, "I couldn't resist the thought of a warm pot of Earl Grey and your honey oat biscuits. The weather's perfect for remembering things." She settled into her favourite seat, a soft armchair near the window with a view of the flower beds Eloise had planted in spring. The cafe was quiet, save for the hum of the espresso machine and the low instrumental music playing from a vintage radio tucked behind the counter. Eloise brought over the tea and biscuits and settled into the armchair opposite. This had become their tradition. An hour or two every Thursday, where time seemed to stretch and slow, like honey poured onto warm bread. "Did I ever tell you?" May began, wrapping her hands around her teacup. About the time the mayor's wife returned a cookbook to the library with a pancake recipe written in lipstick. Eloise laughed, already delighted. Lipstick? Bright coral pink. She claimed she'd lost all her pencils and didn't want to forget the recipe. Poor Mr. Alcott couldn't stop laughing. Said it looked like a ransom note from a pastry chef. They both chuckled, and Eloise leaned in. Tell me more. May's stories were part memory, part folklore. She had spent 4 decades as the town's librarian and remembered not only every book, but every borrower, every habit, every whispered conversation across the old wooden desks. She told Eloise about eccentric locals. Mrs. Penwell, who insisted that books must be wrapped in scarves before being returned in winter, lest they catch cold. The Lovelace twins, identical in voice and face, who used to leave riddles in the margins of mystery novels for each other. And of course, Mr. Alcott, a young man then, who had once built a book sculpture out of discarded encyclopedias for the library's summer fair. He called it the Tower of Almost Knowing, May said with a chuckle. Collapsed the moment a squirrel touched it. As the sun streamed through the window and dappled the cafe's mismatched furniture in golden patterns, Eloise felt as if the walls of the cafe were expanding, making room for the stories that wove through its beams like morning mist. Later that day, as a gentle rain tapped on the windows and a few locals trickled in for a warm drink, May pulled the cloth-wrapped bundle from her bag. I've brought something, she said, carefully unwrapping it. Inside was a mismatched but beautiful set of teacups and saucers. Ivory porcelain, rimmed in faded gold, each one different, yet somehow perfectly cohesive. They belonged to my mother, May said, her voice soft now. She used them every Sunday, always with a fresh pot of lavender tea. She believed that mismatched things brought good luck, and that harmony didn't mean uniformity. Eloise reached out to gently touch the delicate edge of a floral patterned cup. They're beautiful, she said reverently. I want you to have them, May continued. You've created something special here, Eloise. Something warm and real. It reminds me of her kitchen, always open, always smelling of cinnamon and rosemary, and always with room for one more. Eloise felt tears prick at her eyes, but she blinked them away, smiling instead. Thank you, May. I'll treasure them. And she meant it. That afternoon, they brewed a pot of lavender tea, the kind May's mother used to make, and sipped it slowly while the storm outside deepened, wrapping the cafe in soft grey light. They talked of recipes too. May's memory stretched like roots beneath the earth, and she recited instructions with ease. A rosemary and lemon shortbread she learned from a French woman who once stayed in the village for one summer in 1952. A carrot and honey loaf, perfected during wartime rationing. You learn to stretch a carrot further than common sense allowed, she said. A berry custard tart, inspired by a Hungarian storybook she once catalogued, filled with talking foxes and treacle rivers. Eloise jotted the recipes in a little floral notebook she kept in her apron pocket. And over time, those recipes would become new favourites in the cafe, listed as Grandma May's treats. As weeks turned into months, May's seat by the window became something sacred. She came, rain or shine, often joined by Mr. Alcott, who began to sit with her more often than not. They would reminisce together, sometimes bickering like siblings, sometimes sitting in knowing silence. Other regulars learned to listen in on their tales, like Tess, the florist's apprentice, who always paused her bouquet deliveries to ask May about that ghost cat in the archives, or Jordan, teenager who quietly began drawing sketches based on May's stories. The cafe had grown into more than a place for scones and coffee. It had become a living archive of lives gently lived, full of memories, recipes, books, and mismatched teacups. One Thursday, just before winter's edge, May arrived a little later than usual. She was bundled in a thick knit shawl and wore a knitted hat with a floppy pom-pom. "I had a dream," she said as she sat down, slightly out of breath, "about my mother." She was standing at the old cottage stove, stirring lavender tea with a wooden spoon. Eloise brought her a cup of that very tea, poured into a pale blue cup with violets painted on the rim. One of the set May had gifted. "We drank it together," May continued, "and she said, 'Time is like steam from a kettle. It vanishes too fast to waste.'" Eloise smiled. "That sounds like something your mother would say." May leaned back, content, and together they sat in quiet companionship, watching the last leaves drift from the trees outside. When spring returned, Eloise placed a small sign on the bookshelf in the cafe. It read, "Grandma May's Corner, for stories, tea, and time well spent." Above it, she placed a photo of May in her youth, a confident young librarian with books tucked under one arm and wind in her hair. And on the shelf, in pride of place, sat a floral teacup, rimmed in gold, filled not with tea, but dried lavender and rosemary, a nod to the past and a promise for the future. Little Leaf Café, with its worn books, misfit chairs, and golden warmth, had always been a haven. But, thanks to May, it was now a living memory too. A place where wisdom brewed with every pot of tea.